Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you. Another young man was called to ministry and felt the call to go to seminary in a different denomination. And one of his first classes was ministerial ethics. And the teacher was a very seasoned older minister. He had seen it all, been there, done that. And the first class, he just counted horror story after horror story of infidelities and embezzlements and just all of the ways that ministers had gotten into trouble in his experience, and just all the things that the wars between boards of directors and ministers, and the poor kid was shell-shocked after he had heard all this stuff. And at the end of the class, the professor saw that this was the case, and he said, young man, I hope I haven't scared you away from ministry. Looked at him and he said, no, church is great, but if it just weren't for all those people. You get that? We sometimes think that we stop being human when we come into the doors of a church, and it's just not true. That actually, my friend Kathy Hearn says that church is a spiritual community, is where we get to grow up all over each other. It is a place where we get to bring our humanity and see God's divinity revealed there too. So that's what we're about today. We are in week 4 of our 4-part series on why are we here? Our new purpose and value statements. So let's just review, shall we? Week 1, we talked about our purpose. And let's read this together. Ready? In community, we nurture and empower each other, transforming our lives that we may serve the world. This is why we exist, so that in community, together, we can grow and heal and help others do that. We support each other so that we can get rid of anything that's in the way of who we are. And then that is the gift that we bring into the world. Howard Thurman says, don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive, and go do that, because what the world needs is people who have come alive. So we're all here called to bring that thing, that passion in us. Frederick Buechner also said that your calling is where your deep joy meets the world's deep need. So that's what it's about, that we're all here so we can get free to give our gift. And it lifts us all up. Then we have 3 values that we're working with, being, becoming, and belonging. So let's read. This is our being statement. Ready? We live from our oneness with God and each other, experiencing abundance and connection with all life. This really is our only theological, doctrinal idea, is that we are one with infinite love and infinite power that we call God, that we call Spirit. And that means that we're one with all of God's expressions, everyone else. We're all in this together. That's what we believe. That's what our name means, unity. There is no separation. And when we do align with that truth, then we do experience the abundant life that Jesus taught about. We get that connection. And then the second, we talked about becoming. It's kind of a paradox here, because we already are one with God, but yet we don't always know it fully. And so our spiritual journey is one of becoming. Let's read this together. Becoming, through spiritual practice and through grace, we heal and grow, revealing the Christ within. It's a journey for all of us that never ends. We're never going to get all of God, because God is infinite. But all that we are is the light of God if we can just release everything that stands in its way. Christ was not Jesus of Nazareth's last name. Did you know that? It's a Greek word. It means it's Christos, which means the anointed one, the Messiah, the one that... Now, we do believe that Jesus, probably more than any other being that we know of, fully knew it, embodied it, lived it, and expressed it. He is our way shower. He showed us what it looks like to live the Christ. But that is in all of us, if we can just get rid of the stuff that's in the way. Michael Beckwith says that all of our work in spirituality is subtractive, just releasing everything that stands in the way of our light. And then today we're exploring our last statement, belonging. Let's read this one, shall we? we create a spiritual home for all people, knowing that we are one body and that we belong to each other. How's that feel? Some people may be struggling with a little bit, but I hope to address that in just a moment. Cindy Wigglesworth, one of our community members here, she developed the world's first vetted spiritual intelligence test, and you can find out if you have any in spiritual intelligence. She has hundreds of coaches that do this work all around the world, and she wrote a book called SQ21, the 21 Skills of Spiritual Intelligence. Skill 6 of the 21 is connectedness with all that is, and she writes this: Albert Einstein wrote in a letter to a grieving friend, "A human being is part of a whole, called by us the universe. A part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings, as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. The striving to free oneself from this delusion is the one issue of true religion." And then Cindy goes on to say, "What Einstein states so beautifully is a truth that more and more of humanity are waking up to. The fact that we are not isolated islands, but rather we are threads in a web of consciousness and interconnectedness. Martin Luther King Jr. described it as being caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied together in a single garment of destiny." We forget that we're connected. We believe that we're alone. I chose the title for today's lesson, Woven Together. I love that idea, a garment, a tapestry. And here's why. Any of the individual threads in any piece of fabric is easily broken. It's very flimsy. But when they are woven together in and out of each other, it becomes something very strong. And here's the other part I love about that image, that symbol, is that every thread both supports the threads around it and is supported by the threads around it. And that's what I believe we can do as spiritual community. That we are lifted up and supported when we need to be supported, and then when we're in a place of strength and the one next to us is struggling, we can put our arms around them and help them along the journey. I don't know if you've had this experience of living in a spiritual community or being a part of one to that degree when you really needed it, but it saved my life again and again. Just when I was so struggling with who I was and could I ever be free to be able to give my gift to the world, I mean, it was community that showed me the way and that saw my worth and value when I couldn't see it for myself. And I've had and continue to have the beautiful experience of being supported, but then turning right back around and seeing the truth in other people. It's why I'm standing here today. I want to talk about this first part. We create a spiritual home for all people. This is one of the ways that we are distinguished from traditional Christianity. Most Christian churches practice something called exclusionary Christianity, meaning that you must believe a certain set of doctrines and codes of belief in order to be a part of the community there, and others are unsaved, are not part of the communion or the community of God. We don't believe that in Unity. We honor all paths. And we believe that even though we are firmly in the household of Christianity, we are followers of Jesus here, that doesn't mean that we exclude anyone from our community. As a matter of fact, a few years ago, I had a couple that came to me that wanted me to officiate their wedding. She was Hindu and he was Jewish, and they got married at Unity. Is that perfect? And that's what we believe that we honor the path. And truly, I've said there are as many paths to God as there are individual souls. And I don't necessarily believe everything about the New Thought movement and the way it's emphasized and everything, but I look around the world, there's no community that gives me enough room to really explore and express my spirituality, because we are so open. We do not exclude on the basis of spiritual tradition. We do not exclude on the basis of race or ethnicity. We do not exclude on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity or expression. Everyone is welcome, and some of you have experienced exclusion because of who you are in other churches and other religious organizations, and we don't do that. We want you to know that you are honored here, absolutely. We believe that God did not make a mistake in making you just who you are, and we love and appreciate you for being just who you are. Diversity is our strength. And I want to say just speak a moment about tolerance. Tolerance is being invited to the dance. Inclusion is being invited to dance. You get the difference? Now, I don't want to toss tolerance completely out the window. I had a great conversation over coffee with Dr. Jill Carroll a few years back, and she was talking about this. Many of you know she led the Boniac Center for Religious Tolerance, and she talked about that we really have to make room for people whose beliefs differ from ours. They may even offend us. Some spiritual traditions are very demeaning of women. Some spiritual traditions are not accepting of LGBT folks. There are things, and we don't necessarily honor that, but we can tolerate it. You get it? And we make room that they can live in the neighborhood with us, and we don't have to make them wrong. So I don't want to lose the word tolerance. It still has a place because we are here living on a world with a lot of different kinds of people. And it is intolerance that makes it so ugly and so awful to live like in the world. So we want to, here at Unity, we practice inclusion, but we are tolerant, and we always say we honor all paths to God. We do honor the path. We don't always honor the practices, because they are not in alignment with what we call life-affirming. Jill Carroll would say that she would not really honor any religious path that didn't affirm life. Some are life-denying. So we can really see it, that maybe not all paths are right for us. We would not say, yes, I believe that too. But we do allow space for people to have their own spiritual exploration and their own spiritual truth and their own community. But here in Unity, we include all. We create a spiritual home for all people here at Unity. Next, knowing that we are one body and that we belong to each other. You know, when we first rolled out these statements, these two lines are the ones that not a lot, but several people said, that doesn't sound right to me. I don't know that I want to belong to anybody or I don't want y'all to belong to me. I don't want that. And here's what I believe that a lot of the concern about these lines, it has to do with stages of development around responsibility and relationship. There are 3 stages I want to explore with you for a moment: dependence, independence, and interdependence. If we could look at those last 2 lines, we are one body and we belong to each other, and from a dependent state, that is codependency, and that's not what we're about. But from an interdependent state, that's exactly right, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. But first, a tale about my 7-year-old little girl. If I'm a little tired and slurring some words today, it's because I got home late. I had a chance to go to Dallas. She is my daughter of the heart, as her moms like to say. She's not legally or biologically mine, but I'm her daddy, and she is my daughter. And I love this little girl so much. And I had a little break in my schedule, so I drove up there real quick on Friday. And I usually come back Saturday midday, so I have plenty of time to prepare my message. But she had a basketball game, and I am a huge basketball fan. And I saw her play a couple of years ago. I wanted to see how she's progressing. So I went to her basketball game. It was not basketball they played. It's kind of similar. Dribbling is encouraged. They don't call traveling or double dribbling. And so what happens is these little 7-year-old girls, they'll bounce it a couple of times, they'll stand, and they'll bounce it a couple more times. They might take a couple of steps over here and then bounce some more. The only time that the referees call it is if they just take the ball and run with no dribbling. And then they don't call a penalty or anything. They just say, remember to dribble, and then they start bouncing again. Defense, oh my gosh, they can't steal the ball. So defense, the only thing they're allowed to do is stand in front of another player and raise their arms. That's all they do. But what happens is one of these little girls bounces and walks to the basket, and she's ready to shoot. She gathers. There are 5 girls on the other team over her like this. So sometimes the referees will blow the whistle and say, just straight up, and they're like, okay. So the score of this game after 4 8-minute quarters was 12-10. We lost. And one of the moms turned to me and said, last week we didn't score a single bucket. This is good. But Micah, my little girl, she was very frustrated by the fact that when she would get the ball, there were these 5 little girls standing over her. So Chris, one of the moms, said, well, you know, you can block out and make space. And so what you do is you do this, and then you step back, and you do that. And it worked like a charm, and she scored 2 points. Isn't that great? It's so fun. So all of us are on a journey of spiritual and psychological emotional evolution, and there are stages in that journey. All children were born dependent, completely 100% dependent upon our parents or other caregivers to keep us alive. As we grow, we begin to assert a little bit more independence. Micah began at about 3 weeks. I don't know about your kids, but she just had a very strong idea. Nothing is a good idea unless it's her idea, and she's always been that way. And yet she is still very dependent on parents and on this wonderful tribe of chosen family that surrounds her. There comes a point in our growth when we have to realize that I can't depend on another person for my good. When I got sober in AA, my sponsor there immediately sentenced me to Al-Anon as well, because she sensed that I had problems in this area of personal responsibility, boundaries, and relationships. Boy, was she right. And so I began to explore how to move from dependence, codependence, into independence. How to know that I was responsible for myself and my feelings and my experience. How I was not responsible for other people's responses to me. What other people think about me is none of my business. Some of you know this. This is a powerful psychological level we must attain, called independence. We must be self-responsible. I believe that the unity movement has been a big part in moving our collective consciousness into this, because our teaching is so much about self-responsibility, that we work with the law of cause and effect, and that our consciousness is creative, and whatever is happening in our experience, we are responsible individually. It's really important. That's who we are. And yet one therapist told me, we were talking about this, she said, independence is great, but love doesn't grow there. Something else is needed. Because if we're in this purely independent state, there is no vulnerability, there is no mutuality, there is no ability to open our hearts to each other. We don't want to go back to codependence. So we move into this third realm of interdependence, where we are able to experience love, moving back and forth. We're able to experience mutual support. You know, in the old story, the ancient story from the Hebrew people about Cain and Abel, the children of Adam and Eve, Cain killed Abel, and then when God asked where Abel was, do you remember what Cain's response was? Am I my brother's keeper? And this question, this idea of, am I responsible for another, this has made its way through our culture, and it's a really big question. Am I responsible for other people? Well, in codependence, absolutely. I'm responsible for keeping you happy and making sure that you like me, and those are the kinds of things that I think there. In independence, I'm not responsible at all for what you think. But in interdependence, there's a shared responsibility for our experience. Our government, like it or not, is of the people, by the people, and for the people. There's your problem right there. It's people. And what we want to do in all of our humanity, what we want to do now, I mean, with all the mess we've just seen, we want to blame them and blame them for their blaming each other. We have a shared responsibility for how we're governed. We are called, I think it's time we start teaching civics again, so we know how this works, and we are called to take responsibility and ownership of the way that we are governed. They work for us, and we need to be more involved, and this is interdependence. It has to work where we are in collective, shared responsibility for our experience. And I think that this is what's being called for really everywhere. But in the unity movement, the New Thought movement, I think that we are so strong in our teachings of personal responsibility. We're never going to lose that. It's absolutely right. But in our experience of community, I think there's something calling to us, evolving here in our community and others, where we want to move into a deeper experience of shared responsibility, love, support, and community. That's what I think is happening. I keep saying it all the time. Something's happening here. I think this is really what it's about. If you can't distinguish between codependence and interdependence, here's a quick test. All of us have needs that need to be met by other people. If you think your need can only be met by one person, that is codependence. But if you know, and this fits right with our spiritual teaching because there's one source and many channels, if we know that I will have my needs met for relationship, for love and support, but I'm not attached to it being through one person. And when I've seen really healthy, long marriages of spiritual people, they know this. They know that their husband or their wife is not meant to be everything to them. They can't meet all the relational needs. I see the tutors talking about this right now in the front row. They know about this. But that's it, that we learn that I do depend on you, and I'm going to depend on others too, and other people will depend on me too. Thich Nhat Hanh, I want to take a moment to honor this beautiful soul. He's a Zen monk. He won the Nobel Peace Prize a few years back. Just an amazing, amazing teacher. He has gone back to Vietnam, preparing to leave this world, and I'm so touched by his work. One of the concepts that he teaches is something called interbeing. And Cindy Wigglesworth and I were talking this week that she went to a retreat with Thich Nhat Hanh, and he had them all hold a blank piece of paper and contemplate what it is and what's here. And she said they visualized the tree that gave of its pulp to create this piece of paper. And beyond that, they went into the tree and with its roots into the earth and the air and the water, and realizing just as something we take so for granted as a piece of paper, it's connected to everything, and I am connected to it. This is interbeing. Nothing exists. Remember what Einstein said. It's an optical delusion, our sense of separateness. This is a little bit longer reading than I normally do, but I just invite you in honor of this wonderful man, Thich Nhat Hanh, open your heart and receive this. Every time I offer incense or prostrate before the altar of my hermitage, I do not do this as an individual self, but as a whole lineage. Whenever I walk, sit, eat, or practice calligraphy, I do so with the awareness that all my ancestors are within me at that moment. I am their continuation. Whatever I am doing, the energy of mindfulness enables me to do it as us through interbeing, not as me. And when I hold a calligraphy brush, I know I cannot remove my father from my hand. I know I cannot remove my mother or my ancestors from me. They are present in all my cells, in my gestures, in my capacity to draw a beautiful circle. Nor can I remove my spiritual teachers from my hand. They are there in my peace, concentration, and mindfulness I enjoy as I make the beautiful circle. We are all drawing this circle together. There is no separate self doing it. While practicing calligraphy, I touch the profound insight of no self. It becomes a deep practice of meditation. Whether we are at work or at home, we can practice to see all our ancestors and teachers present in our actions. We can see their presence when we express a talent or skill they have transmitted to us. We can see their hands in ours as we prepare a meal or wash the dishes. We can experience profound connection and free ourselves from the idea that we are separate. We are a separate self through the conscious recognition of interbeing. Isn't that beautiful? And so these lines that we are one body and that we belong to each other, it's not codependence. It's not that I'm responsible for your experience and your action. It's that we are part of a fabric of shared reality. And what is the nature of reality? All the mystics of all the traditions agree it is love. Ernest Holmes said that love is the self-givingness of spirit into form. Imagine a single point of perfection, of life, of light. You might imagine sort of a singularity that God is, outside of space and time with no limits, but deciding, feeling that there's this impulse to give itself, and the Big Bang happened. That there is this impulse to give embedded in God, that we are all called to partake in the givingness of love. That's reality. And while we're in our sense of separate, isolated reality, we're missing it completely. I said in the first week in this series that in the 80s and 90s, we had two things we no longer have in Unity. We had exclusive content and an exclusive delivery device. You couldn't get this teaching anywhere but coming to a Unity church. Those things are not true. AO after Oprah. And AA after Amazon. All of this is available everywhere. But the one thing that you can still only get inside our walls and inside any walls we gather in, it's this: community, shared experience, mutual support. This is what we can bring. And I said in the first service, this was Howard's idea that I'm up here. You know that, right? He told me 5 years before we told anybody else in the church that he wanted me to be his successor. If it had been someone else, they might not be talking about community the way I am today, but I am a relational being. I have relationships with carbohydrates. Everything I do is about relationship. My longest relationship is with a pair of jeans. So this is how I understand reality, is it's in relationship, in this mutual giving and receiving. And when I've been saying from the first day that I was senior minister a year and a half ago, something is happening here. This is the happening. An invitation to connection, an invitation to know and be known. Now, we're not giving up our teaching, believe me. I started off also, even before that, even before Howard retired, I asked this question of us. I said, what is the thing that is essential? What is the thing we cannot lose? If we lose it, we're not unity. And what is the thing that wants to happen now? I never told you my answer. My answer is this: the thing we cannot lose is our teaching. This understanding that I am working in the co-creative process with God to experience and express reality, that I am divinely gifted to be an expression of God in a way. We can't lose that. That's who we are. But what's needed now for me is a greater experience of connection, of love, of being known and knowing each other. Maya Angelou said this: we need joy as we need air. We need love as we need water. And we need each other as we need the earth we share. And Mother Teresa says, if we have no peace, it is because we have forgotten we belong to each other. This is the invitation. This is the invitation. To let us know you. To know the truth that you are divinely gifted and you are needed. Your gift is needed now. To sit across from someone and share what's really going on in your life, your struggles and your triumphs, and to be seen and heard and loved in that. That's what's being asked for now in our community. I don't know what it's going to be. I know that our spirit groups is an amazing thing. We're giving ourselves a 3-year commitment to build this program and have it available to you as a way to gather in small circle to get to know each other. If that doesn't work, it'll be something else. But I know it's not the what. I just know. It's not the how. The what I know is that we are being asked to be woven together. I would like to sing to you now. My friend Melissa Felipe is a minister of religious science and a fabulous musician and songwriter, and she wrote a beautiful chant, and we sing it at Taizé sometimes here, and it simply goes, I am remembering who I am. I am remembering who I am. I've been at a retreat, and we sang that for 20 minutes and got into such an open space of remembering that truth of who I am. Well, about 6, 7, 8 years ago, I had the opportunity to be on a little retreat with just me and Melissa at a cabin in Lake Tahoe, and we wrote the sequel to her chant together, and it goes like this. When I forget, will you remember for me? When I forget, will you remember for me? Help me see what you see when I forget. This is my request of you, that when I have forgotten the truth of my light, that you'll remember for me. And this is my promise to you. When you forget, I will remember for you. When you forget, I will remember for you. I will see what you can't see. When you forget, I will remember. When you forget, I will remember. When you forget. Something is happening here. Something is happening here. You are amazing. God is trying to reveal something so glorious in your life. And when you forget, I will remember for you. If no one has told you today that they love you, I love you. Thank you for this opportunity. God bless you. Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.